A 12-year-old Palestinian boy was arrested in Hebron by Israeli Defense Forces. Appalling, right? Well, what if I tell you if the boy is mentally ill? See how soldiers take him, put him in handcuffs, I should say, blindfolded, and force him into the vehicle. The boy was arrested for throwing stones. You know what's even more appalling? It didn't take us much effort to find more cases of young kids being arrested by Israeli soldiers over the last several months. It happens on a daily basis.
It's a little child! What are you doing to him? It's a little child! This is a little child! What are you doing?
Here's another one.
I don't think they did anything.
These children have done nothing. Why are you taking them?
They were standing there.
We saw them.
They didn't attack. They didn't do anything. He's still eating his crisps that his mum gave him. They didn't do anything.
They're too young to be arrested. Why are you taking them?
They look like they're both under 13. I think it's illegal to...
The practice is too common, to say the least. Between 500 and 700 Palestinian children are detained every year by the IDF. Around 8,000 Palestinian children have been arrested and prosecuted in Israeli military courts in the last 14 years. Joining us in the now is former IDF soldier Nadav Bigelman. He's with us from Tel Aviv tonight. What do you make of this latest video?
I actually have seen it today and yesterday several times. Unfortunately, in many ways, it didn't surprise me. I can say that as a soldier that served also in Hebron, as a combat soldier that served between 2007 until 2010, I took part several times in arrests like this.
So you
I
yourself,
think it's even more disturbing
Nadav,
that, as you mentioned,
you yourself have
ill.
arrested children.
I think what you need and the people back home should understand is that the army, the way it looks, even if it says it doesn't, we have dozens of testimonies that show exactly the opposite. Soldiers look at Palestinians in a way not as human beings. And in that way, they also won't look at them as children or as teenagers. As a soldier that served in Hebron and other places in the occupied territories in the West Bank, I can say, that when a person you need to arrest someone, that's the order you were giving, you would arrest him, you would detain him, you would cuff him. It doesn't matter if he's 8 years old, 25 years old, or 50 or 60. The orders we got were very, very clear. I mean, if you need to arrest him or detain him, then you do it. If he's 10 years old, then you also do it. And after a while, you stop looking at people as people. You stop looking at children as children. You stop looking at teenagers as teenagers. You look at them just as Palestinians.
What
just
made
as people
you...
that are always potentialists to be terrorists.
What made you stop and look at these children as children? What made you stop and look at these children, as Palestinians?
For me personally, I think one of the things that I went through is during the army, I started asking questions. It took me a while. Only after I got out of the army, I broke my silence. I mean, I gave a testimony to the organization I'm a part of now, breaking the silence. And I started to be exposed for more and more things like that. And what I think people should understand is that children and youth are only part of these kinds of groups, of these weekend groups. We're talking about, elderly people or women or any kind of people or groups of people, that the army wants to deal with, to arrest, to detain, whatever, they would do it. Once I got exposed for more and more testimonies of this kind, I started asking questions. I started thinking, okay, maybe the problem here is much bigger. This is, in a way, what we always say, this is the natural nature of the occupation. This is how controlling millions of people looks like.
Well, we actually sent a request to the IDF for their official response for this video over the incident, and they provided us with an email basically writing to us that 2 people were arrested, that they were arrested for hurling stones. One of them violated his probation terms and is in custody. The other, of course, was this young boy who was arrested, and that he was immediately released after. Do you think this sort of changes the situation?
I think there's no doubt, that many children and teenagers, and we can see it a lot, grow up to this violent experience, violent life, everyday life of occupation. And they're throwing stones and they're trying to attack either Israeli soldier or sometimes even Israeli civilian settlers. But still, I think what we keep on forgetting, I can say that in Israel, but in other places in the world, that these are children. I can say, from my own personal experience, I served in Ramallah, next to Ramallah, a large Palestinian city, the West Bank, and we used to arrest people that were arranging, also teenagers that were arranging demonstration and protests. So it's not just that. And of course, once you depress and put so much power and force over people, so they would throw stones at you. I'm not justifying that, but I think we should look at the bigger picture.
Do you feel any pressure from your peers, from Israeli society, for coming out, for speaking out against the IDF?
I'm not speaking against the IDF. I was a soldier. I'm representing here a group of about 950 soldiers that served either in the Gaza Strip or the West Bank. What we're saying is the problem is in many ways is not the army. The problem is what the army is sent to do, and that is to control about 4 million people under military regime.
So who is responsible
We've been doing that
for
for
this?
Almost 50 years.
Who is responsible for this problem then?
What do you mean? Which problem?
Who is the problem
Yes,
for using the army in this way?
So there's no doubt, I think, what we're trying to show to the Israeli public, but also the international community, is that we keep on choosing day after day to control over millions of people. And once you do that, and I can say again from my own personal experience, and after I read hundreds of testimonies, that this is how it works. You cannot control people without force. You cannot take people liberty and freedom without them resisting you and then arresting them, and then we can see images and videos just like we've seen the last few days. This is how occupation works. It cannot be quiet and cannot be simple. It cannot be non-violent because by definition it's a violent structure.
What about in terms of Israeli law? Is it illegal to arrest someone who is under, let's say, 18, to arrest a child?
So, absolutely. First of all, I'll start. I'm not an expert. I'm not a lawyer, but I think it's obvious for everyone that in a democratic state, it's not legal to arrest someone under the age of 18, and of course, he needs to come with his parents and so on. We need to remember that by definition, the West Bank and Gaza Strip in many ways is not a part of Israel, not by my definition, but by the Israeli government. It was never annexed to it. That means there are two kinds of law systems. There is a law system for about 500,000 settlers. That's the Israeli law system that we know, that, like you say, is a democratic law system. And there's a law system for Palestinians. And just like I said before, they are always considered to be terrorists by definition, potential terrorists. So the law systems are very, very different. And then, of course, you can also arrest children and teenagers.
Does it make a difference if an Israeli soldier knows that they're being filmed and how they conduct themselves?
I think in many ways, yeah. I think one of the things that B'Tselem, the Israeli human rights organization that published this video that we've seen earlier, one of the things that's so good that they give Palestinians cameras. It's a very good evidence for Palestinians to show human rights violation and things like we've seen. I can say that as a soldier, when I was filmed, you think twice about what you do. And mostly, I think it's the most important non-violent tool that Palestinians have for fighting the occupation, fighting the Israeli occupation.
All right, former IDF soldier Nadav Bigelman with us in the Now Tonight from Tel Aviv. Thanks so much for your time and your input into this very important issue.
Thank you very much.